This episode brought to you by Ice Barrel. Dave at Power Monkey Camp, I walk outside to see a line of these barrels across the wall, and you guys in there freezing cold. What was going on?
Oh man, bringing Ice Barrel on as a sponsor for this camp was something I've been looking forward to for a while. We used to use cold therapy as part of our recovery process when we were living at the Olympic Training Center for years. It was something that I think we've always been missing from camp, and to be able to have this therapy so readily accessible for the campers and for the staff changed the game. It's something that I think we'll be having with the team moving forward. Did you give it a chance to try it out?
Absolutely. Jumping in there, it brought back some very fond memories of sitting in a cold bath with that I cooled down with just ice. I used to go get ice at the store and throw it in the tub and sit there for a while. But this ice barrel made a huge difference. Just a place that's completely designated for that. Single use, much better than kind of the tub that we had there at Power Monkey Camp before, where there is a bunch of us sitting in the same tub. So I really enjoy the aspect of being able to be in there by yourself. It's perfectly fitted for someone of average to big size to fit in there comfortably and get the job done.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are new to Ice Barrel, it's a cold therapy training tool that offers an easy way to bring ice baths to your routine. With a lightweight design and functional features, Ice Barrel is portable, durable, compact, and looks great. It's something I highly recommend. You can use the code Power Monkey, all caps, for $75 off. You can go to icebarrel.com and check out more information. Highly recommended if you're looking to incorporate some cold therapy into your training. Check out icebarrel.com. Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn. And on today's episode, we have the other half of the incredible identical twin duo, Saxon Panchik. Now, Saxon is an incredible athlete in his own right, having finished in the top 10 at the CrossFit Games as an individual athlete twice. His highest place finish being 5th place at the 2021 CrossFit Games. We talk a little bit about that experience as well as what it might take to finally get a Panchik on the podium at the CrossFit Games. Their brother Scott had finished 4th place multiple times, and the Panchiks definitely have earned their right to be on that podium, what it's going to take to finally get that to become a reality. We also talk about what it's like to be an affiliate owner as well as a top-tier CrossFit athlete, and the new wrinkle to the equation now being a dad. He is a dad of identical twins. He is an identical twin, and his wife is an identical twin. They had little girls five months ago. What it's like to now have to juggle being a dad as well as a top-tier competitor, and actually how it's made him a better competitor. I'm incredibly impressed with Saxon. I think he has all the makings of being a podium champion at the CrossFit Games, and we hope you guys enjoy this episode.
All right. So Saxon, I just wanted to say that real quick because I'm really having a hard time all day. I've been saying Saxon, because I want to make sure I don't get you guys mixed up, but I am having a hard time because not just because we had your brother Spencer on a few days ago, but because of Scott. I just feel like there's Panchiks everywhere, man. Panchiks all over CrossFit. But we're glad to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And you are the Panchik, the twin Panchik that just had twin girls, I believe, not too long ago, right?
Yeah, so I had twin girls back in June. So it was right after semifinals to go to the CrossFit Games, and it was like 2 weeks when I got back. They ended up coming into the world.
So two weeks after you got back, so you were there.
Yeah. So I was really nervous about that.
Yeah.
So they were due June 14th to the 18th, kind of depend. But being a high risk pregnancy, they said really anything could happen. They said like be prepared for like 4 weeks out. So I was like, all right, let's try and get in like an earlier event. And I ended up getting in one right at the end of May. And I was like, okay, it's not like best case scenario, but it's definitely not like that week at least. But really, I just told her, I was like, hey, you don't move off this couch. You don't do anything while I'm away. You just sit back, watch. And I was like, I'll try not to stress you out too much. And she's like,
yeah.
you better be sitting in a good position going into that final event. She goes, because I can't do the stress. And I was just like, that was kind of like my motto the whole week. And I was like, all right, I need to go into this final event knowing like I have my game spot locked up and my wife's not in labor.
Hey, that's some great motivation for sure. Now I have to know, were you more afraid of missing the birth or being in trouble afterwards? How much trouble would you have been in if you weren't there?
Um, I don't think too much trouble. But then again, it's just like one of those ones, it's like, being our first kids, we really didn't know what to expect. And she's like, "Oh no, like you do your thing, and everything is gonna work out." And really, that's just all I kept telling myself. And I was like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And if she goes into labor while I'm competing or like before I'm competing, then we'll cross that bridge whenever it happens. But if it doesn't happen, there's really no reason to put any stress on it or really even think about it. And like I'm a real big believer on, like, I think you can manifest a lot of things
Mhm.
that you think about, and like the more that you kind of think about it and the more you kind of put it out in the universe, the more likely it's going to happen. And I was just like, okay, like everything's going to be totally fine. And like I told my family and friends and everyone around me, was like, we have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I think you did a pretty good job there, Saxon, just planning it out with your wife. I had a not so great experience with my second daughter being born. I had planned on going to meet Chad and Chris Hinshaw. We're planning on doing What on the Waves, and
Yeah.
then the baby was supposed to be born in this like 5 day window, and then we were going right to Power Monkey Camp, and I was like, no, I'll be home. It'll happen right in this
Mhm.
window. Not on a cruise. I'll come back. We'll have the baby, and then I'll leave the next day. And for whatever reason, we thought it was a good idea. And then pandemic hit, and everything went to shit, and the baby would have been born while we were at camp. And
Oh
Sadie,
my
my
god.
wife, was like, I don't know why you thought this was a good idea. You were gone while the baby was born. I never would have forgiven you. So I'm kind of grateful that I was there for everything, but it sounded like you had it planned out much better than I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna
See,
say,
it always works out.
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, Dave, you said we in there, but I know Sadie had nothing to do with that decision. That was all
You
you,
didn't know.
man.
I told her afterwards.
You got lucky. Seriously, we got hit with a pandemic. That's
I
for
know
sure.
I'm the only person that's lucky that the pandemic came around.
Absolutely. Well, Saxon, see, I almost did it again. Almost called you Spencer. I'll probably call you Scott here in a minute. But one of the things that I'm very curious about always is how having a kid, especially they're what, 6 months old now. Is that right?
Five,
6 months
five,
old, five. Yeah,
yeah,
five,
five,
going on
about
6.
5, yeah.
Still relatively new. How has that affected your training, your CrossFit, your life in general?
Yeah, I think I guess starting that off really quick would be just having systems in place and understanding that there's different times of the year where I'm going to be focusing on different things. And the same thing with her, like if she's going to be focusing on something else. And that's totally okay. And I think it's just a matter of keeping that communication open of like, hey, this is what today looks like, this is what the week looks what like, and this is what the month looks like, and really just planning things out ahead of time. As to affecting things, and I feel like there's a lot of people that are like, hey, I'm gonna wait to have kids until I'm done competing, or I'm at this point in my life. And I think a lot of people forget that the joy that comes with it it's going to overpower absolutely anything
Mhm.
else that you have going on in your life. And if anything, I think it gives you a little more structure. Like before we had kids, I was going to bed at 11:30, 12 at night, sometimes 1 if I was
Mhm.
watching a good series.
Mhm.
And then I was sleeping until 9:30, and I wouldn't get in the gym until 11:30. And it was kind of like these lazy habits that I was in,
Mhm.
and I was like, I need my 9 to 10 hours of sleep. Really, what this allowed me to do was, okay, I'm going to get up at 7. If I don't get my day started right then and there, then I'm going to miss out on my
Mhm.
training, and that's going to hinder my performance. So, if anything, I think it helped me create a better structure in my life, and also brought me a lot of joy that I never had, as to like having a family.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great thing. And we talk about perspective a lot. I always tell a story that me having a daughter made me a better athlete, a better competitor. Do you feel like having these two girls makes you care less about how you do in CrossFit in a good way?
I think I know no matter what that they're always going to support me, but it was always, my wife that was like, hey, like focus on it. Like if we got to sacrifice some time here and there, like that's fine. Just make it worth it. And now I have 3 girls that I'm sacrificing that time with in order to be able to succeed in this sport. And yes, that puts a little more pressure on me, but that's like 3 people that I know that are going to be very proud whenever all of this hard work pays off.
Now, with your brother, we unfortunately didn't ask him when he was on the podcast the other day, but do you feel like you potentially have a second dad waiting in the wings whenever you need to go and do something because you guys are identical twins? Do the girls potentially gravitate towards him thinking that he is you?
Yeah, I think they think dad's always here.
Mhm.
That could
But
work
it's
out in your
funny.
favor a lot, right? You're
Well,
never not there.
here's one for you. So not only do I have an identical twin, but so does my wife.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then we had identical twins. So it's like a very unique situation. So mom and dad are never gone.
That's some kind of weird metaverse going on, I think.
I know, right?
Very, very cool. I'm fascinated by this twin thing.
Yep.
We were talking to your brother about it too,
Mhm.
about how many like twin, you and your wife, you had identical twins, whether or not there's a genetic feature in there, whether that's something that actually can be passed down kid to kid. And your brother was saying that identical twins is not, and that it's something a little bit more rare to see than because of parents, that it actually is just going to happen. But
Yeah.
is it something in your family besides just you and your brother?
No, I think again, I think you can speak anything into existence. And it's funny, I told my wife, I was like, we're gonna have twins one day. And she's like, I think you're right. And it was funny. We went into our first ultrasound, didn't know we had twins, and we were sitting in there. And I think we waited in the waiting room for probably 2.5, 3 hours. And I'm like, what is taking forever? And my wife was like, I can't sit here anymore. I was like, listen, you can't rush anything. I said, it's totally gonna be worth it. And sure enough, as soon as I said
Ew.
that, they called us back, and I'm just sitting in the chair, and I was totally just messing around with the lady doing the ultrasound, and I go, is there just one in there?" And she goes, "Yes," and she goes, and my wife goes, "What's that?" And she goes, "Hold on 1 second." She like turned the monitor towards her, and she goes, "How did you know that?"
Mhm.
And
Wow.
she's like, "There's two."
Wow.
And then like and then my wife goes, "What's that?" And she goes, "That's not a third."
It's meant to be,
Oh,
man. It was meant to be. Now you have
It
two
really
girls.
was.
You have, you and your brother, and obviously Scott as well. You guys are known for all your achievements in the CrossFit world. On the guy side, are you more happy to have had girls, or were you potentially looking to have boys, being that you have so many strong brother relationships going on?
Yeah, I actually really thought we were having boys. I don't know
mhm.
why, and that was just the one thing I couldn't speak into existence.
Mhm.
But like, I'm just so excited. Just I think just having girls, it's just like there's that extra like protection there, where you're just like, listen, you got me, you got Uncle Spence over here. No one's ever gonna mess with you.
Mhm.
But it's just like this different thing, and like everyone always says, like when you have girls, it changes you, and that's totally true. I just think I think you always want to make them proud, and you always want to be there to support them in any way possible. And I mean, this is me speaking from 5 months in, but just like these different feelings and emotions that come up along the way, is just incredible. And I just think just how much that's going to grow as they grow
Yeah,
is going to be
absolutely.
like it's going to be really special.
Yeah, me and Chad talk about this too, being that between the two of us, we have three girls as well, and how much it really does change you. I can't imagine ever having boys now, and like, what
Yeah.
it's done to me. I'm so grateful to have girls, and I maybe you're 5 months in, you're going to recognize it more and more as they start to grow up more. But Chad having a 12-year-old now, is she 12 yet?
12. Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
Ella's 12 now. He's kind of leading the charge within our little Power Monkey crew here, with girls growing up. But I would have no other way than to have the two little girls running around these days.
For sure, that's awesome to hear.
So moving on to some of the training side of things, you and your brother opened up the affiliate a couple years ago, and we asked him something similar, just with regards to being gym owners and also trying to train. I'm curious for you if you felt like being a gym owner has allowed you to focus more on training, or if those additional duties has created a little bit of a split in your time, especially now being a dad. Do you feel like you
Yeah,
have too many tentacles kind of going in a bunch of different directions that it doesn't allow you to focus on your training as much? Or how do you divvy up the time to be able to manage all those things?
absolutely. I've always been like someone that just loves chaos. I love chaos, and I love trying to navigate it, and like it's like a big class. Like I'd rather have a class of like 45 people than like 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
just because it brings on a whole new challenge of like having to manage things, which I think carries over into my training, right? Because in CrossFit, you're exposed to so many different stimuluses, time domains, and it's
Right.
just like being able to manage all of these different things in your life. And I just think that carried over to me running an affiliate and training and now being a dad. And it's just a matter of, again, finding that balance between things. I would say originally, I think coaching more helped me become a better athlete because my eyes were now on more people. And I think there's a big difference between coaching in an affiliate and owning an affiliate. I think when you're a coach, yes, you have that passion to like teach, but like whenever you own the business, it's like it almost brings a little more passion to it because if you give somebody a bad experience or you don't bring the hype and the motivation to push these people, that they could easily walk out the door. So I think that owning an affiliate allowed me to like really pay more attention to people and like really see a lot of like faults in lifting and gymnastics, and just how people move in CrossFit.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, no matter whatever level they were at, it's like, hey, like I've experienced that before. Now I'm to this point, and it kind of allows you to appreciate the process along the way, but also see different things that work and don't work, and that allowed me to carry that over to a high level of CrossFit.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's something you talk about endlessly, Chad, right? You bring it up all the time, how being a coach allowed you to become a better athlete and how you always encourage athletes to do some coaching because it translates over so well to making some changes as an athlete side. Would you say that that's true?
Absolutely. I think, Saxon, you were spot on with all that you just said, even the point of it's different being an owner versus a coach. I was an owner of a CrossFit gym for many years, and it definitely puts a greater sense of urgency to have your shit together, and to get stuff done and to pay attention and everything else. And though maybe it completely shouldn't, I mean, it's always going to do that a little bit. Now, I'm curious, you said that you love chaos, you kind of thrive off chaos um, in life, and you always have. Is Spencer the same in that regard? Or is he the same because he's a twin, or is he different because he's a twin?
I think he really likes a routine. I think he's really good with like following a routine and knowing what he's going to do for the day, and sticking to that. And that's just always how he was. He coached our morning classes whenever we opened up, so he knew like, hey, I'm waking up at 4:30, I'm coaching 5:30, 6:30, 8:30, I'm training, and then I'm going home. And he focused more on, I guess, a lot of like the coaching side and like a lot of the, I don't want to call it like dirty work, but like something broke in the gym or like he was
Mm-hmm.
cleaning the gym. He did a lot of that, and I did a lot of the administrative stuff and like dealing with people as they were coming in and things like that. Where like I think you're dealing more with people and communications, and I think that that's a lot more unpredictable than like having things like, okay, I know I got to go in and
Mm-hmm.
change the light bulbs, maintenance the rowers, whatever it is. So I guess, yeah, we're a little bit completely different whenever it comes to that aspect.
Yeah. Are there any other ways in life that you feel you guys are different? Again, I've just seen twins before where I feel like one twin fills in the other twin's holes, so to speak. Is that kind of true with
I'd
you
say that's
guys?
pretty spot on. I mean, even whenever we got into CrossFit, Spence was really into like the weightlifting and really gymnastics. Both of those two things were like his best thing. And I was more of like the cardio guy and like the
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit, like I guess you would call it hybrid. Um, and we were able to push each other in different ways. And I feel like these last 2 years that finally came together where like, hey, we're
Mm-hmm.
both now becoming very well-rounded athletes. And I think we just push each other in those different ways of like he teaches me how to fix things around the house, and I teach him, writing emails or like putting people's stuff in through Modify, different things
Right.
like that. But I feel like we're always complementing each other to become better men and business
Mm-hmm.
owners more than anything.
That's amazing. That's truly amazing. And now I will say that Spencer was very quick to point out yesterday, no hesitation to say that you were always a little bit behind he and Scott in Olympic lifting, numbers wise.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now, I mean, the numbers that you hit are nothing to shake a stick at. They're incredible as well. But always being usually a little bit behind. One, are you still behind Spencer any at all? Have you completely caught up with him?
I'd say we've equaled out pretty evenly. I think there's like a lot of his like power lifts are a little higher. So like his back squat, strict press, deadlift, things like that. But I think that gap has closed significantly. And I'd say I caught him where we're pretty equal on the snatch and clean and jerk. But I always enjoyed being behind. Just because, and I've noticed this is kind of carried over into like becoming who I am as an athlete. So like I feel like nobody ever cares about like what your time was in a workout and things like that. Like that's nothing like, oh, like you can't like you can post a time on like social media and people aren't gonna like really think, but you post like a 315 snatch or a 365 clean and jerk. It's like, yeah, people like that. Um, but Spence and Scott were always hitting heavier lifts than me. And like I'd hit like, a 20 or 30 pound PR on my clean and jerk or snatch. And I'm just like, like it's still not there. I was just like, and they're like, oh, that's sweet. Like that was a PR. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like, it's cool and everything, but it's not where you guys are. And I feel like it kind of kept me to the standard that until I'm like beating these guys or I'm winning strength events or even gymnastics events, I'm never going to be satisfied. So it just kind of keeps that little fire lit. I always want to like celebrate different lifts and things like that, but I'm just like, unless it's the best, to me, like there's nothing to celebrate. And that's kind of a concept that I'm trying to change a little bit. I think mentally, because I like to think feeling's kind of the secret, right? So if I hit a PR and I know what it feels like to hit a 20-pound PR, like I should embrace that and be excited about that, because the more that I feel that success, the more I think it's going to come my direction. So
Mhm.
that's just kind of like a mindset shift that I've started to switch a little bit in order to, I think, succeed a little more in CrossFit.
Yeah, I mean, of course, so much about mindset and your ability to continue to improve, to continue to fight your way through training and then compete to the best of your ability. And do you think mindset or the drive that you got from being behind was the whole answer as to why you caught up, or is there anything in your training that you did specifically different to close that gap?
Yeah, I think really everything was a lot of patience for me. And that was something that Scott always told me was just like, be patient. Like your body's still growing. And like, I'm 25 now and I'm like, listen, I still think my body's growing. I don't think I'm going to hit my peak till I'm like 28, 29, as soon as I grow a beard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I just think having that patience. And when I first got into lifting, I think I was lifting, my technique was really good. I wouldn't say great, but it was good enough to be able to lift max loads for my weight, for my body weight. But I don't think my body physically could handle those loads. So like I vividly remember I think I was 17 or 18 and I hit a 292 snatch and I was like 170 pounds.
Mm,
And
it's big.
like my elbows were just starting to hurt and my knees
Mhm.
were starting to hurt and I was just like, okay, I need to like dial this back a little bit and be okay with that, and let's just focus on working like 75, 80, 85%, and let's just work more repetitions there, and like you can still keep that technique, but we got to focus on putting some size on and staying healthy.
So you said 292 at 17, weighing 170. So at that point, you were behind Scott and Spencer. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, I think Spence was
Wow.
17, he hit like a 305 snatch.
Holy
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. That's I mean, I'm so impressed with you guys anyway, but even more impressive. And so 292, you said you backed down. Did you stay at that level for a number of years? And have you gone beyond that at this point?
I actually just hit a PR at 295 at Granite Games. That was the first time I've snatched over 290 since then.
I love that. I mean, honestly, you were so young, 17, but you recognized that you needed to hang back, get some reps in with what you said, 75, 85%.
Yeah.
That's where you truly get better and stronger anyway, to be honest with you. And it's incredible that you recognize that and that you implemented that and you stuck to that, it sounds like, for what, 8 years now?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I was super excited whenever I hit it. I was like, oh man, I should have just tossed 5 more pounds on and get
Yeah.
300. But at the end of the day, it's like, I knew that I wouldn't make it in the sport any longer if I continued to try and hit those loads. And I think I was always chasing those guys of like,
Mhm.
hey, I just hit 315 and I was just like, I'm gonna hit 315. But
Yeah.
like I there's no way I would have made it in the sport any longer if I kept up with those habits.
But that's the maturity and discipline as a 17-year-old. I mean, most people, even in their mid-20s, late 20s, masters athletes don't have that kind of discipline to say, I need to back off and work at 75, 80% and work on repetition and work on mobility and work on all these other things. What do you think allowed you to do that? I know we bring him up a lot because he's such an important figure in terms of what he did in the sport, but does having someone like Scott around at that stage facilitate that and have his voice be able to say, hey, let's back off a little? Is he one pushing it?
Yeah. So I originally lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and now I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. And we moved out here 16, 17 to help Scott open up a gym. And like, I just was like a CrossFit guru. I was just like, I'm winning the games this year, like 16, 17 years old. And I'm just like, no doubt I'm winning the games. And like, Spence was the same way. And we kind of had like this, kind of like a little cocky, and like we would roll up to Scott and be like, and just like, it would be just a bloodbath every single day. And like, we were fighting to the death to win workouts. Right. And this went along for about a year and a half until we realized like, hey, we're like hitting our heads against the wall here. Like we're all going to burn out if we keep going like this. So I think being around somebody like him, where he was 25, 26 at the time, you know, we only hung out with him and his friends. And we were at such a young age that like anyone our age was out, you know, partying in high school and going out, and we were in the gym with him. So I think that allowed us to really mature a little bit. And then having those conversations of like, hey guys, like, you know, I'm 25 right now, and like, I'm still working to get into my peak at like, you know, 26, 27, 28. You guys realistically have another 4 years. And it's like, if we all continue on this path, it's not going to be good for any of us. So like, let's dial this back and let's figure out a system, and let's put a system in place that's going to allow all of us to succeed. And one, for him to be able to compete for another 6 years, and then one for us to be able to compete whenever we get to that point, and allow that to last you for, you know, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And you touched on it a little bit in there, and it's become one of my favorite questions to ask high-level athletes that we've been able to get on the podcast. And it's with regards to exactly what we were talking about, being around other elite athletes on a daily basis. And, you know, you said early on, you know, it became a bloodbath on a regular basis, and just every day you're going at it and you're trying to just destroy the person next to you, making sure you're winning the WOD. And how over a long-term period, is that sustainable? Is that something that's best for you as an individual athlete? Now, there definitely are some benefits to be surrounded by other great athletes, right? People to compare yourself on a regular basis. Right. But how much can you actually push like that and not start to see breakdown happen? Do you think that being with Spencer, and I know Scott's at Mentality and a little bit down the road, not with you on a regular basis, but do you think it's beneficial to be training at that high level with someone to compare yourself with on a daily basis? Or would you prefer to be able to train on your own regularly and then be able to test yourself out against a competitor more regularly? Basically trying to emphasize that there's these super teams going on right now. And is that a beneficial situation versus someone training more on their own?
Yeah. So I guess I have like kind of like mixed opinions on it. So one, the first thing would be this, right? You don't see an NFL team go out there and have a football game every single day. You know what I mean? If they did that, they would be beat up. And I would say really what we're doing to ourselves, if we're going in, you know, let's just say we're doing 3 workouts and, you know, a strength or 2 a day, like you have 5 things that like you're pushing to beat the people next to you. And you do that 6 times a week, 20 total competitive things per week. I mean, you're looking at 80 events in a month. And, you know, you have a full off season, like there's no way you'll make it to the season feeling good. And I think there's a big difference between practice, which is what we should be doing, and competing. I think it's okay to compete, you know, 1 or 2 times per week, if that. But I think the rest of it needs to be practice, where you're dialing in on your own weaknesses and things that you need to work on. And I think everybody's completely different. I do think some people thrive, you know, training in a big group setting where, you know, everybody's being competitive and everybody's, yes, you're going to get better that way, but how long is that going to last? Like you might get better for 1 season, but like, if you're looking to do this for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, there's no way.
Yeah. I think that's a really great perspective on it. I like the analogy to the football team in there. This episode is supported by the Power Monkey Clinics. Chad, you and I have been doing Power Monkey Clinics for close to 10 years now. What's your favorite part about the clinics?
Well, I was just reminded of how much I love doing these weekend clinics. A couple weekends ago, we did one for the first time in a long time. It's such a great experience to get out in front of a group of people, in front of a community, that each little gym has its own community, and just love being a part of it and being able to teach what we love.
Absolutely. And, we offer one-day clinics where maybe we just target gymnastics. Maybe it's just weightlifting. Our most popular is a combo clinic. That's gymnastics and weightlifting, 1 day and 1 day. Sometimes we merge them into half days each. We travel around the world. We've really visited over 25 countries around the world teaching these things. We love coming to you, being able to teach what we're passionate about. We can't wait for our 2022 schedule to start coming out because we already have some things on the agenda. But if you're looking to attend, go to powermonkeyfitness.com, look under our events tab to see where we're going to be coming to next. And if you're interested in hosting, check out Mike Service, who's our coordinator for all events. Go send messages to Mike at Power Monkey Fitness, line up a clinic at your gym in your city, and we'll come and hang out with you guys and teach you some great information around weightlifting and gymnastics. You've seen a lot of athletes try to pair up with someone from the opposite sex. You have a male, female together. You have a Matt and a Tia together because they're not direct competitors. Would you see value in something like that for yourself?
Yeah, I would definitely. But again, it's just a matter of finding somebody that, is willing to do everything that you're doing in the same day, and be willing to really move. I mean, you don't have too many people like that living near each other. I think that's just a little more complicated. But even then, I still think you need to be super cautious. So something Spencer and I did is we'll pick a time, maybe once or twice a month, where we're being competitive. Other than that, we don't work out next to each other. It's normally he does a workout and I do a workout. And what ends up happening is one of us are chasing the clock if it's something that like it's not complex and it's not very technical and it's just go, go, go. Other than that, each of us are trying a different approach to the workout to see what's going to be more successful. And that's the great thing about having somebody that's on the same page of you is, hey, I'm going to try this technique and you try this technique through this workout or this split, and let's see what's going to be the most beneficial. And it allows us to really do the workout twice.
Yeah, that's badass. That's a really great perspective. It's really great for you guys to both use your abilities there.
And I just think you have so many people that are like will try and keep that stuff close to them. Why not use that to be better, especially to have 2 Panchiks at the games or 3 Panchiks at the CrossFit games out of 40, there's definitely room for both of us to be able to go. But when you have, 5 or 6 guys, now that field's getting shorter and shorter, that hey, I'm not going to tell you my times or my lifts. And it becomes very I would say an unhealthy competitiveness. I think what Spence and I have, it's very healthy and we keep each other very honest.
Would you ever try something like that in a competitive setting? Say, Spencer's in a heat previous to you. He gives you some info on how the heat went, depending on the way he approached it, to give you some information on your heat.
Oh, absolutely. Scott and I did that at the games this year and even previous years, the 4 years that I've been there. And the same thing happened with Spencer. If we were ever in different heats, it's hey, I'm done. You go out there and if I can't win it, I want you to win it. I'd rather you win it than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about in a situation like we saw last year at the Open, 21, 3, and 4, where you guys are going head to head to head?
Yeah.
How was that experience? I mean, I don't think we've ever had a situation where we've had siblings compete in an open workout like that, let alone 3. What was that situation like for you guys being able to compete?
It was a little different. So Spence and I train every day together. Scott doesn't. Scott kind of does his thing. So and it's been a while since we've all competed next to each other. So when we went in there, I think Scott had a little fire, where he's listen, I'm the big bro and I'm gonna beat you. And me and Spence were hey, what are you gonna do? We were just treating it like another day. And Scott, I think, treated it more like a competition, which he should have. And I think Spence and I were just a little too relaxed in that, which led to him actually absolutely crushing it. But I think our times were really good, and I think looking at it, people looked like Spence and I got smoked, but those were still top 20 scores in the world. No, Scott just literally just crushed it. And
it's not happening. It's not happening on live TV. Being sandwiched with 2 of my twin brothers. They are taking me out. I love it.
Yeah, but it was just fun, and I think it's very easy to look at situations like that as hey, let's be super competitive. But I was looking at it really as hey, this event is starting off the CrossFit season. And for me, I always said it's foreshadowing what the CrossFit Games are going to look like. And I said that throughout the whole season last year. It was like, we all get to have the feeling of us competing next to each other. Let's carry this to quarterfinals, semifinals, and let's carry this to the CrossFit Games, and let's hold that feeling and that vision together. And I think that was really what I was thinking about during the Open more than anything.
Are you happy that Scott retired from individual competition so that you had one less guy to worry about at that top part of the podium, or are you going to miss him as a competitor out there?
Listen, I'm telling him every day, listen, you're not retired.
He's gonna make a comeback.
You can retire whenever all three of us step on the floor together.
Just taking a little time off.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised if he announced that he's coming back. That would not surprise me one bit. But man, you really make it sound like, as I'm sitting here listening to you describe what you and your brothers do and how you train and give tips and everything else, you really make it sound like a huge advantage to have two brothers competing at a high level. I mean, of course, you guys are incredibly talented and would most definitely be in the games if you were by yourself. But the way you put it, it really sounds like an advantage. Do you guys see it that way?
Yeah, for sure. But it took us years to be able to do that. And it was funny. That's what we always said. So I remember doing the marathon row, and Scott finished before me, and he came and dumped water on my head. And Boz, the head judge, came up. He said, "Hey, you can't do that. No one else gets that." And he's like, "Listen, we earned this. Like, both of us are here. Like, we're a team. Like, we earned this." And I was like, "Let him go. Let him keep dumping it." But like, we just look at just different things like that. It's like, at the end of the day, like, I did what I needed to do to be there, and he did what he needed to do to be there. And like, that happened for us as individuals, and we individually succeeded. Now let's enjoy that together. And that's one thing that we always tell each other is like, like, we can't necessarily always rely on each other. Like, yes, we can push each other, but at the end of the day, this is an individual sport, and you need to be able to do things on your own.
I think CrossFit's going to have to implement some Panchik rules, some things that you can't do in competition, like dump water on somebody's head.
For sure.
Now, what is it going to take for a Panchik to end up on the podium? Your brother was right on the cusp so many times. You finished 5th last year, right on the cusp. What do you think the missing link is to finally get a Panchik on the podium?
That's what I'm working on this off season. And I think it's just creating different systems and having different things in place throughout the whole year, and knowing exactly, how you're training, when you're planning to peak. I felt like the last couple of years, it was just, and I've tried something different every single year. I've been to the CrossFit Games. So the first year, I trained with Scott, and we were very competitive in 2018. And I think I went in that year a little burned out from being so competitive, just because I was so young, and I was just like, I'm just going to do more and more and more. So then flash forward to 2019, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to program for myself, and I'm not going to do nearly as much training, lower volume. But every piece I do, it's going to have the most intensity, and I'm going to treat every single workout like a race against myself. And I think that allowed me to take 9th place. But what happened that year was I got halfway through the events, and we made the final cut to 10. And my body just shut down. I wasn't fueling properly. I don't think my body had the volume that it needed. And I think if it did, I definitely would have been in the top 5 if I was able to do that. So I was like, okay, I need to train more volume and have a better diet. So then we got the 2020 COVID year. That was kind of like, it wasn't what I was ready for. Was an online format. And I felt like that kind of got changed like last minute. Like, all summer I was training to go to the CrossFit Games and training, running, ruck running, hill sprints, sled pushes, and a lot of like awkward stuff that you would see at the CrossFit Games. Then they're like 3 weeks before, hey, we're switching to an online format. And I just don't think I was as prepared. Now, I did get to go out and test I did a simulation of the CrossFit Games on the demo team with Dave out at the ranch. So I went up the hills that they did, pretty much ran through everything that the games athletes did in the order, and the same rest between, which gave me a great idea of where my training was at that time. And I was very pleased with my scores stacked up against those guys' scores that were out there. And I was like, okay, I don't need to change too much. So then that was when I was working with Facundo, and we continue working through this year. And this ended up being my best year to date. So I was like, okay, there isn't too much that I need to change, but let's go through and let's see what events I did bad in, and let's see how I can improve those events. And I think it's just every year it's fine tuning. And I think that's what's very important about being consistent of getting to the CrossFit Games. And I take this back to whenever I originally got into CrossFit. Was when you go to the CrossFit Games, you don't want it to be a fluke. You don't want it to be 1 year and then you're never there again. So you want to make sure you bring everything with you, your strength, your gymnastics, your endurance, and you're a very well-rounded athlete. That way you can make it there, year after year. And I've been lucky enough that that's exactly what happened. So I now have four years under my belt of like, okay, this worked, this didn't work. And now I'm just thinking every single year is just going to get better and better, because I know exactly what works and what doesn't work. And let's implement those things that work, and let's fix those things that don't work. And I feel like this is really going to be a big year coming up, because I feel like I finally have everything together and the pieces that I need.
Seems like a very similar approach to what we were talking about with just your snatch approach from being 17 and taking the long approach. And the question being like, what's one area of focus? It doesn't seem like that's an appropriate question for you. I'm trying to get 1% incrementally better across the board so that I can be prepared for whatever's thrown at me. There's not like a substantial weakness that you're trying to attack. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's not very like a spectator friendly thing for people. I think you see those people that get to the CrossFit Games that do very well their first year, and they build this huge following, and the media kind of gives them exactly what they want. And for me, you look at my years. The first year I went, I took 21st. Second year I took 9th. There's the COVID year, and then this year I took 5th. So like everything's just a slow incline, and it looks as if like, oh, he's been here for a while. But really, if you look at the bigger picture that, a lot of people don't see, is like that progression is happening slowly over time. And then all of a sudden it's going to be out of nowhere. Like, what happened? And it's just like, no, like if you actually look exactly what's been happening, it's just been a slow process that was done the right way. And to me, that's going to be able to last a long time. I mean, I'm 25 and I want to be able to do this until at least I'm 35. I really want to focus on like breaking the barrier. So like it is a long game. But I think if you can stick to that, it's totally going to be worth it.
Well, you at least have to stay in longer than Scott did. You got to beat him. That's your motivation right there.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things you mentioned in there is that you spent some time programming for yourself, and I did that for most of my career as well. Is there anything through that time that you spent doing that you found, one or two things that maybe you found is advantageous in programming for yourself? And then on the other side of that, what are a few of the difficulties?
Yeah, I think one of the big advantages about programming for yourself is at the end of the day, you own the result. 100% you. Like you were in charge of your programming, you're in charge of your rest, you're in charge of your recovery, you're in charge of absolutely everything. So like that was something that I carried in 2019, was like, hey, this is all on me. Like I did this, and like I feel like I'm the fittest on earth. Now it's time to back that up and show people like, hey, like I did everything I needed to do, and this was done without anybody. And I never really wanted to rely on anybody else to help me with that. Now I'd say a disadvantage was maybe I became a little biased by not doing as much volume or not doing enough thrusters and chest to bars. So that's whenever I met Facundo and he gave me some different workouts, and I was like, oh, wow, like this is legit. And I ended up having my best year, not only at the games, but in online formats. And if you look at the CrossFit Games in 2020, like I had a terrible year in an online format. And this year I ended up finishing 4th in the world in the open, 7th in the quarterfinals, and then I ended up winning my semifinal event. So like it was hands down my best year in different events, especially online events. So to me, I was like, okay, that was something that I was missing in my training. So like now let's create a system of like, okay, and I just had this conversation with Facundo, how can I put a little bit of insight into my training as well, so that I can own it too. And I just came back from the Rogue Invitational, and it was totally not the outcome that I wanted and anticipated for myself. And I was like, hey, like, let's reevaluate and let's see, what can I change in my programming? Like, let me help, give a little bit of insight as to, like, what I think I need to be doing more. So we've been collaborating a little bit and just bouncing workouts and strength cycles back and forth to see, hey, what's going to work best for me.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there as well. I do believe, because I did it for so many years, that some athletes, maybe not most athletes, but some athletes are better off either completely programming for themselves or having a large amount of insight into their training. And I can't even imagine, going from programming for yourself to then completely handing it over to someone else, which sounds like maybe you did with Facundo there for a little bit. I did that through phases of my career as well, going from programming for myself completely to then giving it to someone else completely. And it never really worked. And it wasn't that necessarily that I was right and they were wrong. It's a combination of my personality and knowing myself, reading my body, just a combination of me as a person that led to that. So for me, if I'm going to have someone, programming for me, I think like you, it sounds like the way that you're going to benefit the most is having a large amount of that responsibility and that control and that insight into your program. So I'm glad that you're kind of going back to maybe a little bit of a better combination for yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, and I was just talking to Spence about this, and just some other people in my life that was, I got into CrossFit whenever I was in 2008, and I was at such a young age. But like, if you look at it, like, I got into it the same time as Rich Froning, Graham
Mhm.
Holmberg, and all of these like older athletes. The only difference was I was, 11, 12 years old. So like, I've always been practicing, programming and breaking
Mhm.
down videos and snatching and clean and jerking with a PVC pipe or an empty barbell for all of this time, that it's like I never want to forget that, like, hey, although someone's older than you, like, you still have a lot of insight into CrossFit than a lot of
Mhm.
different people in the sport. And the sport hasn't been around long enough to have people like that. And it looks like we're very young, but we do have a lot of experience in these different things, which is something that I always want to remind myself.
Yeah, I just can't keep myself from believing that if you have experience, if you have knowledge, if you are someone that has the ability to program, maybe a talent for it, um, there's no better coach for you than yourself. I mean, it's always good to have support. It's always have to have someone to bounce ideas off of, to maybe get an occasional eye on your movement, to keep you in check, to make sure you're not getting off track and doing anything crazy. But I mean, you're the one inside your own body, inside your own head. You know how you're feeling better than anyone on any given day, and how much rest you've gotten, how much you've eaten properly, and all those kind of things. And for me, that was such an advantage to be able to make those adjustments. And now to be fair, because I was programming for myself, a lot of times I didn't adjust when I knew that I should have.
Yeah,
But you do that enough times, you're gonna, figure that out and make those changes.
for sure. And that's one thing I love about Facundo is, like, he's very good at, like, being able to collaborate and bounce ideas. And I will say he's like one of the best people that has always kept me honest with myself. Um, which is what makes him a great coach and somebody that I want to be able to have in my corner along the way.
Well,
That's interesting. Yeah, Facundo,
yeah, yeah.
he's a
I was just
big
gonna
part.
say we love Facundo. We
Oh
love
yeah,
him.
he's a big part of our Power Monkey family, and we've known him for years now. And he's transitioned in being such a high level coach now for so many high level athletes. Him living in Belgium and away from you, and not only distance wise, but time difference and things like that. One, do you feel like that's a barrier that has been challenging to have a coach that's far away, that's not kind of either in the gym or somewhere close by with you?
Yeah. No, actually, I think it's helped make me very successful and allows me to still focus on different things. One thing that I never liked was a coach sitting like I never want to have to ever rely on a coach, right? I
Mhm.
should be able to easily walk into any event without my coach and win it and be able to succeed in it. And I think there's a lot of different athletes in the sport that rely so much on their coach that they can't go compete without them.
Hmm.
And to me, I think a coach failed if their athlete needs to rely on them to be there with them, pretty much holding their hand along the way. Um, because as coaches, and speaking from a coach in my gym and the program in the gym, you know, you want to set your athletes up to be able to coach themselves.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And I think whenever you did that, you did your job and you did things the right way.
Man, that's such a mature perspective on things. And, I don't think we get that too often, Chad. I think you, Chad, as an athlete, had that probably your whole career, being that you program for yourself. You always had the mentality of, I'm doing this because I know what's best for myself. But, Saxon, for you to be able to recognize what probably is the best approach for what a coach should be. A coach should be a guide, and for you to be able to take on those tasks for yourself at some point, not to always be handheld and be your binky in a competition. To be able to actually do those things on your own, and I think that's such an amazing perspective that I don't think many athletes have.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, I was not like that. I needed a coach to hold me for a lot of my career, and
Well,
so yeah, it was just in the gymnastics world, it's maybe a little different because
yeah.
a coach actually does physically hold your hand on learning a lot of skills in gymnastics.
Right.
I mean, like a coach is actually there putting you through skills, and like there's
Yeah,
a connection there because there's actually physically manipulating you through things, and you trust them to be able to help you learn specific movements. But with regards to the mental aspect of it and getting into a training situation or competition and saying, I know how to attack this because I was taught appropriately, not turning to the side and say, what's my strategy here?
Mhm.
Because I need you for every single thing. That's completely different, right? So you're training an athlete to be able to be prepared for anything in the same way that CrossFit need you to be prepared for anything.
absolutely. And I think if you look at how all CrossFit athletes train, I bet you it's pretty similar. So what's the difference? To me, it's the mental aspect, right? Like if you go into an event and you have any little doubt, right? Like, did I train hard enough? Did I do the right things? Like, hey, where's my coach at? Like, how should I do this? Right? It's not that they don't have you prepared, it's they don't have you prepared mentally, right? Because if you go out there and you have a 10-8-6-4-2 snatch ladder and you're like, hey, like when was the last time I snatched? Like
Mhm.
I don't remember ever doing something like this. You now start to put these little doubts in your mind that's taking you, most likely you're going to go out there and you're probably going to take a bad place on that snatch ladder because you don't trust your training, you don't trust your coach. So I think that's why trust is huge because it helps build up that mental aspect that really is going to allow you to succeed and separate from everybody else. And I think it's those little thoughts that if you can push those out, really that's what's going to put you on the top of the podium.
My money's on you, man. My money's on you to see you up on the podium sometime soon. If it's not this year, it's going to happen very, very soon. I love that attitude. I feel like it's similar to maybe what we would expect from a Fraser, right? Maybe Chad, you
Mhm.
might have some perspective on that coming since Matt comes from the weightlifting world. But he seems like the kind of guy that does it himself. No real definitive coach in his corner throughout his career. Someone that has used some technicians here and there to help with some of his movement patterns and some pacing things with Chris. But for the most part, he took ownership of who he was as an athlete, and I think that facilitated what you're able to see on the competition floor for him year after year.
For sure.
Yeah, it's so easy to say that athletes and people are different. And yes, we are to an extent, but at the same time, I think there are basics that need to be in place. And so whether you program for yourself and you just have a supporter or two on the side, whether you have a distant coach like Facundo, it seems to be for you, which it makes perfect sense to me why you like that so much, because you are the type of guy to have a tendency to want that control of your programming and a tendency to want to program for yourself. Or whether you have a coach that's there with you every single day, as an athlete, you have to have a certain level of independence. You have to have the ability to not have to be babysat. And that nothing bothers me more as a coach, to be honest with you. And I think this is part of what makes me a little bit less of a good coach than I could be, is that even in a CrossFit class setting, I am very unwilling to babysit. If I tell you to do something 1 or 2 times over the course of, say a month, and you're there 3 times a week or whatever, and I've told you 2 or 3 times, like, I expect to not have to tell you to do that again. I know there's cues and stuff like that, but I'm talking about like a mobility drill, or assigning them something like that. Like, when you have to babysit someone like that, to me, in my opinion, they're not going to make changes. They're not going to be the best that they can possibly be. So if someone's made it to the CrossFit Games and they're on the elite level and they've got a constant babysitter, like, that's amazing to me. Like, I don't even understand how that happens.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of speaking to that, and this is really cool as like a coach, and I'm sure there's a lot of different listeners out there, but um, Dave, I bet you could relate to this as well. But like, when somebody says, "Hey, I want to get a ring muscle up," and like I have so many people that come up to me in the affiliate and they're like, I really want to get a ring muscle up. I'm like, okay, we got to practice ring rows, strict ring rows, tempo ring rows. Same thing with dips. Like, we need to be able to develop these skills. And then the next day you see them up there trying to attempt a ring muscle up, just swinging and praying for the best. Right. And it's super simple. It's just like, if you truly practice these skills 3 times a week for a month or 2 months, I promise you, you will get a ring muscle up. Like, that's it. There's no secret. It's just that. And it's just every time you just see them up there just praying for the best. And they're no longer coachable, right? And the same thing goes for us as like elite athletes. Like, it's the same thing. Like, you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to be humble, and you need to be willing to accept feedback whenever it's right there in front of you in these different areas of your fitness.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, yes, I agree with you 100%. It's something that Chad and I and the rest of the Power Monkey team have been working on for the past decade, trying to get people to understand the process that goes along with those stepping stones to skill development. And I think you're exactly right. And, I think you're fairly unique. Saxon, you're not the everyday athlete, obviously, from a physical perspective, but at 17 years old, the things that you changed in your training to be able to pursue longevity and to pursue proper skill development, and to understand that being healthy for a long period of time is not something that most athletes have the ability to do early on. So, I think your mindset, and maybe it was having both Spencer and Scott around to help facilitate that a little bit, but whatever it was, I think your physical ability is matching your mental game. And I think that's one of the reasons why you've had this much success so far. And I think that's why it's going to be fairly likely that you're going to actually continue to have this trajectory and end up on the podium. Like I said, I got my money on you over the next couple of years.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So I had this question at the end of our podcast with your brother too, but I'm curious if it comes down to the games and we are in a situation where you're right on the cusp of ending up on the podium. First Panchik podium, first place is within reach. What workout do you want to see come out there for that final one on Sunday?
As an athlete, I'm going to say, give me anything. But if you really wanted my confidence high, give me some high box jumps and some heavy clean and jerks.
All right.
I'll take that. Yeah. Well, I won't go head to head with you, but I'll do the workout on my own.
I love it. Well, we're coming towards the end of the podcast, man. This was one of the quickest hours I think we've had, so I appreciate the time. But before we get you out of here, a couple of quick ones if you're up for it.
Always.
All right. What sport or discipline you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Weightlifting.
Oh, he had to think about it a little bit more than
that's because I got you both on here. I didn't want to anyone.
Took a breath and then he answered.
And I was like, all right, I need to be honest with myself.
This is great. This is great. Yeah, I mean, it's at least 5 in a row, right?
Yeah, I think it is maybe more than 5 in a row. This has never happened. It's the
same thing I said. Everybody likes the weightlifting because it looks cool.
Well, I'm way behind on that question.
On Instagram, right? The CrossFitters like it.
Yeah, well, I'm slowly becoming more and more depressed, Chad. Congratulations on 5 in a row. And
you know what I did? I will tell you this. I did post a Scott went down to the Power Monkey, and it was like a front roll into support.
Yeah.
Or back roll.
Yeah. Back, I think
that was cool. That did very well on Instagram. I was like, I got to learn this in the day so that I can put this on Instagram.
I remember working with him. He came to our camp too. That was like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember working with that on the low rings, him and Wes Pyatt and those guys that came out to that second camp. I remember Neil Maddox was there. We had a great group at that camp too.
That's awesome.
Well, in any case, I greatly appreciate the nod to weightlifting there. Thank you. I need it.
All right, let's move on from that question. Imagine it never happened. Question number 2. Any guests that you think we should have on the podcast that would be great for us to have on?
As an athlete?
Anyone who comes to mind.
I know Spence said this, but our buddy Greg, that really kind of helped shape the mindset really that I have today. He was somebody that came into my life in 2018. And there's a big story with it, but you know, I never met the guy, and I had a call with him. The chiropractor that I worked with at the time was like, hey, I just want you to talk to this guy. And this guy he talked to me before the final event, and he helped me with my mindset. And it was one of the craziest feelings ever. And that ended up being the first year that I qualified for the games. And I truly can say that he was a big part of that, and a big part of helping shape who I am today.
Can you say his last name again?
Greg Russo. Not the Mortal Kombat guy.
We were hoping that's what we looked up last time. We're like, we can get the Mortal Kombat guy on. That would be pretty sweet. All right. The other Greg Russo. Perfect.
Yeah, we got to get him on for sure. Any books you've come across here recently that you'd recommend to the listeners?
Yeah. I'm not a big reader, but I started Atomic Habits, which is really cool. I read 100 pages in a day, and that's probably the most I've ever read since 5th grade.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. That one's on the list. I think probably more than any other ones have been, I would say.
Yeah, I've got that one. I read that one. That was suggested by so many people. Actually, the author sent me one. It's a great book. Awesome.
I think he went through and he's just like, all right, let's find every athlete. Let's just send him this book. Cause he reached out to me. He's like, hey, can I send you this book? And I was like, okay, I have to read it.
Great. It's great. Very much worth reading.
Well, Saxon, man, it's been a pleasure to chat with you, to get to know you a little bit more. You know, the Panchik twins and Scott, we actually talked to him not long ago as well. And it's just great to know you guys. You're a great group of guys, a great family. And I think your brother even mentioned we should have your sister on. She's doing a lot of CrossFit here lately. So maybe we'll have her on someday and chat with her as well. But you have anything coming up you want folks to know about, and where can we keep up with you?
Yeah. So you can keep up with me on Instagram specifically. My handle is Saxon_Panchik. As for anything coming up, just Wodapalooza here in January. Right now I'm kind of focusing on a little bit of off time and really enjoying some time with the family for this next month, and then it's head down and we're ready for 2022.
Awesome. Well, we'll certainly be keeping an eye on you. Like Dave said many times, I would place my money on you as well. I'm looking forward to seeing how not only this next year, but the next handful of years goes for you and your brother as well. So to our listeners, guys, as always, we very much appreciate you listening in. Be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.